The Feres Doctrine, the most deadly legislation passed by Congress that negatively impacts military service members and barring them from receiving help in times of troubles or whenever the military is negligence. It bars them from what we say was making themselves whole. While the civilian sectors, when a person or company is negligent and it causes death or injury, they're able to sue for damages to make themselves whole again, to get closure. But in the military, in 1953, Congress shut that door on U.S. service members, which basically bars them from suing the U.S. government for claims under the Federal Tort Claims Act for wrongs committed by the government, by the military. Hi, my name is Gary, and this is Military Illumination. We're a podcast for anyone who's considering enlisting in the military or their family and friends. People who are in also can benefit in hindsight. Maybe they're going through something. It may give them some avenues to solve issues or problems, or at least let them know what they're up against. Anyways, today we're going to talk about the Feres Doctrine. We're just going to have a simple conversation about the effects of the Feres Doctrine and why you should consider it when thinking about enlisting in the military, considering the impact it may have while you're serving. Okay? So, I talked about it before extensively on other episodes the last 2 years. There's a lot of things out there. If you just Google the Feres Doctrine, Feres Doctrine, you will be able to get a lot of information. Save Our Soldiers is a really great website that has an in-depth research and information on the Feres Doctrine. I think it's Save Our Service Members. Okay, I think I got that right. Hopefully, I'll look it up. Okay, in a nutshell, the Feres Doctrine is basically a Supreme Court case precedent that bars service members and their families from suing the government in federal court for negligence or for harm that was caused to them. What you need to understand very simply is that it was made up of 3 cases. Rudolph Feres was one of them. He was an officer that was killed in a barracks fire with some other soldiers. The Army took responsibility, admitted negligence, but they barred his family, his widow, from seeking damages for their family. If that doesn't make you think twice about joining the military, I don't know what would. Right? They have all these ads about camaraderie, valor, all that BS, right? But here there is a family, a young mother with a little one whose husband was killed because of negligence of the military, the U.S. Army, and they essentially denied her claim, barred it. And that's how we got the Feres Doctrine. There's 2 other cases that make up that. In their weasel way, I guess the military will say they get some type of insurance, right? And so that's how they've been made whole. Not necessarily. Insurance is garbage anyways, right? It's not. I'm sorry, it is. There's not, and how it's administered, and they probably tax it as well. It's just garbage. Anything the military can do is garbage, right? So, the other case was Jefferson versus the United States. Was basically an active duty soldier who suffered. I guess they left a towel inside of him, right, after a surgery, okay, and in his abdomen. And I guess he must have had some issues or some problems when he was a civilian doctor. He went there, they operated, and they pulled out this towel that said U.S. Army. And so once again, they denied his claim. That was Jefferson. And another one, the United States versus Griggs. He died due to alleged negligence of medical treatment by military surgeons. Once again, an Army service member died because of negligence of a military surgeon, and their family probably was seeking retribution from the government. So instead of owning up to it, our congressional leaders decide to bar them. They wrap these 3 cases together, and this come to known as the Feres Doctrine in 1950. Okay, it consults 3 different cases. Once again, like I tell you, you talk about benefits, right? The difference between a military doctor and a civilian doctor is that a civilian doctor is held to a standard of negligence. They're held to a standard. And if they're negligent, they're going to pay. The military doctor, they can care less. They slice you, dice you, and cut you open 3 times. And they screw it up, they screw it up. So, yeah, they have medical, right? But what's the quality of it? I've had a couple surgeries on my knees. And most recently, they did this when I was in. They did this, I don't know, this experimental type of surgery where they drilled in my kneecap to reach blood, and it was supposed to have built up cartilage or whatever. This injury that I got when I was in the military, I got out almost 10 years later, and this foreign body was in my knee, and every once in a while it just poked its way up and it locked my knee up. I had to kind of reach out and push it back into place behind my kneecap, and I can walk again. So, anyways, the civilian doctor went in, and he pulled it out. It was like a stone. It was a big calcium buildup. I remember him. It must have been like about the size of a quarter, about round, like maybe 50 the size of a quarter, and probably about I don't know. It was pretty thick. Put it this way, he put it in the cup. He brought it to me, and he was and then don't get me started on JAG either. On the same issue, I'm gonna digress here real fast here. My friend, and that's what's gonna be happening in season number 3 for me. Is I'm giving you all the lowdown, dirt down, everything that happened, and you can make a decision. Yep, these rascals, they've been hiding behind it for so long. I'm gonna share exactly what happened. But on the night that my friend had signed this plea agreement, right, because he didn't have an attorney now, he didn't have a military attorney, he didn't have nothing. He was screwed. And I was walking out, and one of the lawyers that he had actually showed up, and he was telling him it was a civilian lawyer he had to pay for. And here's what he said: after all this stuff, actually, by the way, his name was Byron Holcomb. He has passed away. Lord bless his soul. I hope he made his right with God, because if not, he's gonna be baking for a long time. Anyways, here's what he said: after all these months, and my friend was telling him, talking with him, it's a long story, how he wanted to sue Gregory Goodell in National Guard for how they handled the case. After it's all said and done with, he told them, you may not be able to because of the Feres Doctrine. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. After all, and that's how we found out about the Feres Doctrine. Yep. It's a dark secret. It only comes up when you're in trouble. When the military has violated your constitutional rights. All right? So that's how powerful it is. An attorney who refused to represent walked away from the case without being court ordered, released from the court. Not only did that, I'm not even going to go there. You're going to hear about Gary Goodell next season, okay? That's coming up. So anyways, let's move forward here. You think about your constitutional rights. Yeah, you may fight for your constitutional rights, but Feres Doctrine takes away your rights to have constitutional rights in your favor. So there's 4 cases that you might want to consider yourself. Is United States versus Johnson, that was 87. Chappelle versus Wallace in 83. United States versus Stanley in 87. Ortiz versus United States in 10th Circuit. All of these cases was hinged on constitutional violations by the military, by the commanders. In Chappelle versus Wallace, the court ruled that enlisted personnel cannot sue their superior officers for constitutional violations. And that makes sense. Honestly, that does make sense. Why you can't have an army where everybody's suing your commanders. You got to have some type of order, right? But tell them that. Tell them before they sign the document. Tell them about the Feres Doctrine. Tell them, the enlistee, that they don't have any constitutional rights. Tell them. But if they tell them, they probably won't join. So you keep it a secret until you have to use it, right? In United States versus Johnson, the Supreme Court expanded the Feres Doctrine significantly ruling that it even bars service members from suing the government for the negligence of civilian employees. Okay. Addressed on Ortiz versus United States, the 10th Circuit addressed the bounds of the doctrine by barring a child's civilian birth injury claim from being brought against the government. What we're saying here is in 1950, the ruling based on 3 cases barred the military and their families under the Federal Tort Claims Act from suing the government. Since that time, numerous cases have come before the court, and they all ruled against it. There's criticism of the doctrine. Military malpractice has some legislations. What I'm saying is they're making some progress, but for the average person, they won't see that progress. The Feres Doctrine is nasty. Okay, it's just straight up nasty. And they don't even in the contract. They don't even put it in the contract. They don't put nothing about that in the contract. They don't put the Feres Doctrine. They don't say they don't, and they shouldn't they? But no, they don't say anything in your service contract about the Feres Doctrine. The only time you're going to hear about it is if you've been injured or negligence by the military. So what does that mean for somebody who's been sexually assaulted by the commander? The sexual assault among girls 18 to 24 is massive, right? I remember back in the 80s, I think, or maybe early 90s, there was a tailhook scandal in Las Vegas. That's something where a lot of people were sexually assaulted. And I haven't done my research on it right now, but I can almost guarantee you that they were barred from suing. And in most cases, probably nothing happened. Nothing happened. And there's no transparency in the military, so you can never know if anything did happen. But one thing we didn't know is a lot of women and some men were sexually assaulted. Sexually assaulted. That's a fancy term for being raped. Okay? Legally raped in the military, most likely by a commander, most likely by somebody in the chain of command, and nothing was done. Let that sink in. But they don't say it. They don't talk about that in the military, in the contract. In the contract, they could put in there, in case of rape, you know what? There's nothing you're going to do about it. They don't put that in there. You know what I'm saying? If you're sexually assaulted by your commander, you can't do anything because of the Feres Doctrine. They don't put that in there. Right? They don't do it. It's a dirty little secret. That's the Feres Doctrine. Feres. Doctrine. Doctrine is basically how we do business. And how the military does business is that they prevent the soldiers, the airmen, the Navy, the sailors, the airmen, the Coast Guards from suing the government under the Federal Tort Claims Act and their commanders. So then what do you have? You have a free-for-all. You have what the National Guard did, right? Which just violated every right, every constitutional right, every legal right, denied the person any type of legal, how you put it, support. They didn't. It's just, it happens. It doesn't just happen in the Washington National Guard, because those rascals that did it, they were active duty, right? If you want to know about these things, just Google it. It's the Supreme Court Feres Doctrine, ineffective assistance of counsel, anything like that. This is a time of technology. You can look at cases, right? Look at it and then decide, is this what I want to be part of? Is it going to happen to me? And if it does happen to me, could I handle it? PTSD. A young woman or a man they're sexually assaulted, and they bring it up thinking that they're going to get help. They talk to the IG, Inspector General. They talk with their chaplain. They talk with JAG, and nobody helps them. Not only that no one helps them, but they don't get any help. But now they're ostracized. They're the one that's at fault. They're the one that's going to endure punishment. Think about that. I don't know. YouTube's got a lot of it on there. Think about it. Just think about it for a minute. Let that sink in. The Feres Doctrine should be in the contract. It should be in the contract. And it could be something that's just as simple as this. The Feres Doctrine is a Supreme Court precedent preventing active duty service members from suing the federal government for injuries sustained incident to military service under the Federal Tort Claims Act. It broadly shields the military from liability for negligence, malpractice, and intentional torts. Notice I said it broadly. It's just nasty. It's just pure and simple. It's just nasty. Hey, but yet we are recommending our young men and women, high school age, to walk into this. There's a reason why the suicide is high. There's also a reason why re-enlistment is very low. Retention is very low. There's a reason why. Because everybody's seen the wizard. They've seen the strings. But anyways, I think I'm good there. I think I said what I wanted to say. And we're up on 19 minutes, which I think is ironic because 19, remember that was 19 acts of injustice by the National Guard so far. So my next episode, I'm going to be talking about the sexual assaults. And just a really overview. It's a nasty thing. It happens. It continues to happen and continues to rise. But no one's talking about it. But I'll talk about it and I'll share with you. And in the meantime, just relax, have a good time. Until next time, do your homework. Bye-bye.